We're now going to add the drop shadow effect to this box on the page, and we're going to walk through these CSS3 properties one at a time so you can get a feel for how each of them works, because the home page for our website has all of those properties combined on a few different objects on the page. So it's a little bit harder using that type of a page to show you what's actually happening with each of these properties. So right now I have dropshadow.html open, and that is a part of the course files for this chapter. And if I open up the CSS Styles panel, I have a single box called CSS3 Props on the page. I'll close up my Files panel, and now what I'm going to do is add the Box Shadow property. Now that is a property that adds the little drop shadow around the box, and we can customize it a little bit. So I'm going to click the Add Property link in the Properties area of my CSS Styles panel, and if I use the drop down and scroll down, you can see I do have a box shadow property listed. I'm going to click on that. Now if you want to do this the easy way, what you do is click this little icon. But what's nice about this is you can see that it gives you the information. So first it says offset blur, radius spread, and radius color. So let's click on that and you'll be able to see the options available. So you can see I have an inset. By default, it's offset. My X offset, I'll go ahead and raise that. And usually you don't want too much, but if you're unsure what to add, just add something and go from there. So I'll add 5 for X and Y. And my blur and spread, I can also add. So let's add a little bit of blur, and I'll add a little bit of spread and choose a color. Now I'm going to make this a much darker blue here, so it's fairly obvious. Let me go even darker than that. That will be my drop shadow for this lighter blue box. I'll go ahead and click on that. When I click off, you can see Dreamweaver has set up that property for me, and I can move this over just a little bit so you can see a little bit more. Now nothing has changed in Dreamweaver. We'll go ahead and save this. If I go into Live View, you can also see nothing has changed. These are definitely browser features. And what we're going to do is go through the browsers and take a look at them. I'll start with Chrome. And when I open up Chrome, you can see I do have a drop shadow effect. It's a rather substantial one, actually. So that's why it's very quick to figure out how much drop shadow you want. So it is square because I haven't rounded corners yet. That's another CSS property. But this one is a little bit large. So it is working in Chrome, but it's a little too big. So what I can do is click this to edit it. The X offset is a little wide, so I'll drop it down to 3. And my Y is as well. Now the other thing I want to add is the blur radius. I'm going to blur it out a little bit more so it's a little bit softer. I'll click off of that and we'll save and take a look at that in Chrome. So here it is in Chrome, and you can see that looks much nicer. Now I may want to drop that down a little bit more depending upon what I want. I could also lighten or change the color. I could do whatever I wanted. You can see the properties that are available for this feature. If I wanted it a lot more subtle, which I definitely think I would, I could play with that. So feel free to go ahead and play with some of this. Let me change the spread property. So I'll click this one more time, and the spread radius I'm going to drop down to 2. Let's take a look at how that ends up working. And I'll go back out into Chrome, save my changes, and we'll take a look. That's getting a little bit softer. I think that's a little bit better. Now that was Google Chrome. Let's take a look at this in Firefox and see what Firefox does to it. You can see it does look a little bit different in Firefox. It's a little bit softer. So it's accepting those properties quite well in Firefox. My blur is kind of feathering out the color. So Chrome and Firefox, so far so good. Let me go down to Safari and see what happens. And this is an expandable box, so it will change depending upon the size of your browser window, but Safari looks fine also. What I mean by looks fine is it's pretty consistent across those three browsers. What happens if we get to a very old browser and take a look? As I said, a lot of the people I work with, my clients who are at larger companies, are still using IE8. And notice it doesn't mess up the box, it just doesn't show. So there's nothing we can really do about Internet Explorer 8. There are some games and frameworks you can pull in and those types of things to try and get it to work. But I'm not going to worry too much. As long as that box looks okay and I can still see the outline of the box in Internet Explorer 8, I'm fine. So there are some proprietary prefixes that are available for box shadow, but based on what I'm viewing in Safari, Firefox, and Chrome, it doesn't appear that if I'm going to test for these specific browsers and the versions I'm looking at, it's all working correctly without a proprietary prefix. If I needed to add one, I'll show you where you do that. Down at the bottom, let me open up my Files panel a little bit here. And down at the bottom of the CSS Styles panel, I always keep it in this one, Show Only Set Properties, because it only shows me what I have added in terms of properties. But if you click on the A to Z and scroll down, you'll see here are all those proprietary options for the different items. And we were using drop shadow, our box shadow for our drop shadow. And here it is, in case it's a version of Firefox that doesn't support it, I can always add this. And notice if I click on this, it's identical to the non-proprietary version in terms of the Dreamweaver interface. So if you ever need to work with the proprietary prefixes, feel free to move over to this A to Z and they will be listed. -Moz is listed, MS for Microsoft, O for Opera, WebKit for Safari and Chrome. But we were able to get our box shadow to work without needing any of those proprietary prefixes. So that is the box shadow property within CSS3, and also how you can apply the proprietary box shadow prefixes should you need to from within the CSS Styles panel in Dreamweaver.